Hi, everybody. My name is Joanne Scillitoe, and today I'm answering your entrepreneurship questions. The first question is, how do I know my idea is actually good? Well, if you're a new entrepreneur, you don't always know whether it's good. If you're a serial entrepreneur, you kind of create the ability to vet out ideas a little bit more quickly. But the reason is because there's a process in play. You need to go through the process to understand whether your idea is actually good. For example, customer discovery is part of the process of thinking about your idea. Do you actually identify the right problem? And is it a problem that has enough pain points with potential customers? If you find that you don't have the right problem or it's not creating a lot of pain for potential customers, you might need to pivot or adjust your idea. Also, revenue models, business models. What kind of business model, what kind of revenue stream are you looking at? Is it going to be a nonprofit, a for-profit, et cetera? These are all decision points along the way and help you understand whether, when you say my idea is good enough, okay? It's really about maximizing profitability or social impact or whatever you're trying to achieve, but you're finding it along the way and you're pivoting along the way as well. Like I said, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, you can kind of intuitively see things much quicker, much earlier, and vet out an idea much quicker. But it's still the same process nonetheless, whether you're a young entrepreneurship just starting out or someone who has been doing entrepreneurial ventures all along. The next question is, what's the first step in starting a business? Well, going back to what I just talked about, it's about vetting your idea. Is it a good idea? What are the pitfalls, et cetera? So one of the first things that you can do is go through the customer discovery process. You might have identified a problem that needs to be addressed, what we call an opportunity in entrepreneurship. And going through customer discovery is not marketing, but going back to potential customers that you think would be customers for your particular product or service and asking them what kinds of problems they're experiencing in the space that you're trying to address as well. And that will help you determine whether you have a good idea or initially a good idea, and whether it's something that is worth pursuing to the next step. So starting that process is the first step. The next question is, when should I register my business? Well, you can be an idea stage for a while, not need to register your business. You can think about customer discovery, think about your revenue models, your business models, et cetera. Once you have a customer, you need to register your business. There are legal liabilities associated with doing business, and you have to understand that if you don't create an LLC or some sort of entity legally, you're personally liable. So if somebody gets hurt or you give bad advice or somebody sues you for whatever reason, defamation, et cetera, you will personally be sued. And then you will be responsible at an individual level. Having an LLC or a corporation, S Corp, et cetera, protects you from that. So it's very important to do that once you're actually working with customers and they're paying you for whatever you're providing. The next question is, how do I fund my startup with no money? And as students, money is always a challenge. Well, you should approach every idea from what we call a lean perspective. There's this whole area called the lean startup. You can Google that and take a look. There's a whole bunch of resources available online. But the concept is how to fail fast, how to go through the process and minimize your costs along the way. You don't want to spend a year developing your idea. You want to fail fast. You want to know in the first few months whether it is a viable idea or not. So you want to take a lean method, which is a low cost. You're not going to be buying resources. You're not going to be purchasing a physical facility for your office space. If you need an office space, you can use one of the shared office spaces that are out there, or if you're a CSUN student, you can ask for some office space as part of the incubator. You're not going to go buy a manufacturing facility. You're going to talk to your current manufacturers that might have some excess capacity and see what costs would take to actually be a manufacturer for your particular business, okay? So you want to leverage as much as possible. The idea is to minimize your out-of-pocket costs as much as possible along the way. so that your business can be more profitable. You're always scaling up. You're never starting big anyhow, okay? Next question. When should I bootstrap or look for investors? Well, going back to what I just talked about, you're going to be bootstrapping as much as possible, okay? Comes out of your pocket, your energy, your time, etc., and also family and friends are the first places you look for people to support you, people to provide resources, etc. And it's not just money. There's other resources people can give. They can give in-kind expertise, such as legal advice, accounting advice. You can go to different entities, such as SBDC, Valley Economic Alliance, etc. Usually, investors want to take an equity stake, and that's a problem, okay? They're going to take part ownership of your business. Then you need to be very concerned about dilution of your business. What percentage of the business do you own? Because each level that you get a new investor in for different series of investings also takes another chunk of ownership of your business, okay? So my advice to you is bootstrap as much as possible. And if you can develop your business as a privately owned business and never have an investor in, that's not a bad thing. There might be a point where you do need investors to come in because you need to really scale or you have significant costs. Let's say you have a product that might be a new vaccine. You have significant amount of years in development and going through clinical trials. You're going to need to have investors to help you get through those portions of your business development process. What percent of equities should you give? Usually it's like 5, 10, 20%. It really depends on the valuation of your business. And I'm going to defer that to a finance person. That's a very complex calculation. I do recommend talking to somebody who can help you determine that valuation. And it's a function of your idea, your intellectual property, how big of a customer base you have. There's a lot of variables into that. And never just talk to one investor. Get perspectives along the way. We look at Shark Tank. There's 4 investors there, right? You're trying to get the best deal. And like I said, it would also bring that finance person in with you to understand what you really need to do so that that money then that they're provided you is going to really move you forward. Some investors will give money and some will give money and advice. And are you prepared to take their advice? Because they have a say in how you're running their business because they're also a co-owner. So you may not like what they have to say. And I'm going to say this as a caveat. I do research in the area of social entrepreneurship as well. If you're trying to achieve social impact in addition to profitability, you'll find investors are going to really push you towards that profitability, and you might lose your social impact as part of your business. So you want to be very, very careful about bringing investors in only when you need it. And like I said, students think it's a rite of passage. I have an investor, it's such a big thing. I would be very proud of you if you managed to develop your business without those investors. Next question. How do I scale without losing control? Well, what do you mean about losing control? You will lose control if you bring in equity partners because they become owners. So let's say you have multiple equity partners that might own 60, 70% of your business. You only own 30%. So if any of those own more than 30%, they're going to have more of a say than you do, okay? So, and also if you become a publicly traded company, you have shareholders. You lose control because you have shareholders and you're going to have a board of directors on board, et cetera, okay? But the thing is, if you have an entrepreneurial business where it's just you or a partner running it and you're growing and growing and growing, you're going to need to hire employees. Are you losing control? You're delegating, okay? You hire good people, people you can trust, who are going to take it to the next level. I don't see that as losing control, but you're expanding along the way. An important part of developing your business is culture. How you start the business and the culture, that environment that you're creating within the company is going to carry on within the company. If you're a micromanager and you have to control everything, you're going to create a culture where people feel micromanaged and they're not going to feel that you trust them and that you're going to allow them to make decisions that are good for the company, okay? So you want to create the right culture along the way as well. So as you're growing, that culture continues to move along with the company as well. So the next question is, what is culture and how do I develop the right culture? Well, culture is defined as the norms, values, beliefs, systems, and behaviors within an organization. So what are the unspoken rules? Those are what the norms are, okay? How do people interact and act within the organization? Value systems, hopefully you have a mission statement, a vision statement, and also some values along the way that are going to guide employees. So those mission statements, vision statements, and value statements are not just for external, for stakeholders outside the company, but they also help guide how decisions are supposed to be made within the organization, how people are supposed to act. So if you really care about collaboration and teaming, and you really care about social impact and doing the right thing for the environment, those can be value statements. Those will help guide how people behave within the organization, but also help guide who applies for your job openings and who you're going to hire along the way. However, it also depends on the kind of business that you have, okay, as you're developing it. If you're creating an innovative, creative company, you want collaboration. You want people to work across areas as you continue to grow. So you want to create a structure and a culture of collaboration where people are sharing information, working with one another, which also means as you, as the founder and CEO, are having less control, because you're encouraging people to communicate with one another. Not everything is always going through you, but it's working across the organization, and things are bubbling up and ideas are churning, new ideas, etc. Okay, so it's a balance there. But if you're going to open up a manufacturing facility, it's a little bit more structured. You have to have people who are trained on a particular piece of equipment. You have structured hours for capacity for what has to happen within a given shift. You have people scheduled for different shifts if you're trying to run 24/7. And you can't just have anybody doing anything, okay? So there's, in that kind of environment, you could still have a culture of respect and values, et cetera, but the jobs are a little bit more defined, but collaboration may not be as valued in a place like that because people have specific roles, specific machines, and specific outcomes that they have. So the culture could be a little bit different there, and not necessarily negative, but it really comes down to what kind of business you want to have as well. But think about why you opened up the business, okay? Look at Ben & Jerry's. They had the culture where it was about caring about people and healthy ingredients, right? And the environment. Now they've been bought up by, is it Procter & Gamble? I'm not sure which is the major company. Okay, and some of the complaints they've had is that the culture is kind of dissipated as it became a subsidiary of that, and that's what happens. But as a founder, you can have a say in that culture. But if you're going to be micromanaging everybody and controlling everybody and expect everything to go through you at the beginning of the organization, it's going to become what the organization is like. And so you need to be aware of what kind of culture you're setting from the very beginning. The next question is, when should I pivot? Whenever you need to, okay? The whole process, as I mentioned, entrepreneurship is a process, it's a journey. If you're an experienced entrepreneur, especially if you're in an industry that you know very well and you've had several businesses in that industry, you're going to have more clarity as you start. But as a newer entrepreneur, you're going to be pivoting constantly, okay? I teach entrepreneurship here at CSUN. And the students are just through the problem stage. They came up with a problem, came up with a solution, okay? Just 2 or 3 students. How do they know that that problem and solution is going to resonate with many, many more people, okay? 2 people is not enough of a market for sure, okay? So they're going to be starting customer discovery this week, which means they're going to go out and talk to potential customers about the problem that they see, the context, to see whether it's a problem for those people. They're not even talking about their solution yet. Before they even do anything with the solution they've identified, which is their business idea, they may pivot. And it happens all the time. I've had teams go out and say, we talked to these individuals and we realized they're not our customer. Our customer are other businesses. It's not the consumers. Well, that's a pivot, right? That's a pivot in your business model and who your customer is, et cetera. So it's a constant process, and be open to it, because pivoting is a natural part of entrepreneurship. It might be feedback from customers, it might be feedback from manufacturers, it might be recognizing your revenue model is not maximizing the profitability that you wanted to achieve, and you're going to be constantly pivoting. So there's an open-mindedness that's required. But I also want to talk about this concept of escalation of commitment, okay? This is a psychological process that sometimes we continue to do something even though we're getting information that it's not the right thing to do, okay? It's just broadly defined escalation of commitment. The same happens in entrepreneurship. You've invested hours, maybe 6 months or a year working on your business and things are not working out, okay? You're pivoting, you're changing, doing this and that. Then there might be a point where it's just not working out and it's time to move on. And I've actually talked to some entrepreneurs about this, that recognition that what they developed might have a market of some sort. They actually were making some money, but they didn't have what we call a competitive advantage, meaning that as soon as they started making enough money, some bigger competitors were going to be able to easily move into their market and take over. So that means that they were not going to ever become a big company, and that those big companies may not even be competing in this space yet, but they can easily move into this space, okay? So I tell these entrepreneurs, take that money, take the revenue that you have, and put it into something else, okay? If you look at the McKinsey matrix, they actually identify question marks, stars, cash cows, and dogs, okay? The 4 elements of a McKinsey matrix, and it's the concept of cash cows. Cash cows are business units within a large corporation that are making money, but you know the market's dying for whatever reason. Maybe it's shifts in societal beliefs. Maybe there's just too many competitors out there and your product is really not that unique anymore. Whatever it is, you don't keep reinvesting in that business. You take the money from it and reinvest it in what we call the question marks, the things that if you put some more money in, is going to actually help it develop and become more competitive, okay? Same for entrepreneurs. If you're making money, but you don't see your competitiveness is going to continue on, there's times when you just need to say, okay, we'll make our money for now, but we're not going to be reinvesting any additional time, energy, et cetera, but we're going to take that money and develop a new idea or a new product or service or something along the way. So pivoting, though, is a natural part of the process. All right, so the next question is, what's the biggest mistake first-time founders make? Not networking and not sharing your idea, okay? When I meet a young person I ask them, what's their business idea? And they ask me to sign a non-disclosure agreement right away, I said, they're going to struggle, okay? By going out and networking and talking about your business idea, you're building your networks, you're building your partnerships, finding your collaborators, finding your co-founders, finding employees, etc. There are ways to nuance what you're saying, okay? You don't have to share all the details, all your secret sauce, so to speak, but you can talk generally in terms of what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do. 95% of ideas out there are just incremental improvements to what's already out there. Very few, less than 5% or about 5% are what we call novel ideas. Nobody's ever thought of before, okay? Get out, talk to people. If you have intellectual property, go secure it with a patent, copyright, whatever it is, if you need to. And like I said, there's ways to discuss your idea without giving all the details. But I will tell you, there's zillions of great ideas out there. It's all in the execution. If you don't execute it properly, you're not going to be profitable. It's not going to go anywhere. So even if you're sharing your idea, doesn't mean that anybody's going to be able to execute it as well as you. So don't share your execution ideas. Don't share how you're going to go about it. Just share what you're trying to achieve and the general idea of what you're trying to do, okay? So get out and network, talk to people, get feedback along the way, hear other perspectives. You might be pivoting all along the way just from what you're hearing in that regard. The other big mistake that I see with student entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, okay, not founders per se, is not doing anything. There's a lot of people with ideas and they get stuck in perfectionism and they just, or they see that somebody else is doing something similar and they're afraid of doing something, taking that first step. Take the first step, try. Like I said, 95% of innovations out there are just incremental improvements to what somebody's already doing. So it doesn't mean that you can't get out into that space as well and do something. You're going to start your journey and your learning as you're doing entrepreneurship. So get out there, do something, take some action. Is AI replacing entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs? No, Not at all, okay? One thing, AI is really good about combining and integrating information that already exists out there. It does not replace human creativity and ingenuity, and that's always going to be the case, okay? It's never going to create a brilliant idea. If you go and put in AI, tell me about this, it's only going to take information about what's already out there and not have that creativity piece. But also, AI is now going to facilitate entrepreneurship, which is interesting. It's the next wave. I talked to Dr. Zell, who's the AI fellow here at CISA. She goes, entrepreneurship is where it's at. That's the new growth area. So absolutely, it's actually the opposite. And what's interesting, and I just published a paper on this subject, is AI as a co-creator. AI is leveling the playing field, that entrepreneurs are going to be more easily able to compete with those big companies that are already out there, because you can utilize all the information on the web to help you get to that point. You don't longer need to have all those connections, all that information, all that research that's available to the big companies that wasn't available to you. It's all becoming available to you, and it's going to help you ramp up more quickly and have a much more viable and solid business plan along the way. So we're all seeing entrepreneurship as facilitating entrepreneurs and making them even better and able to compete better. But also what we're seeing is AI is getting rid of obstacles and barriers, particularly found for women and minority entrepreneurs. Women and minority entrepreneurs have traditionally not have access to the same networks, same quality of networks, mentors, quality mentors in industries they're competing in, but also funding. And AI can actually enable them to overcome those barriers as well. So we're going to see more equity in entrepreneurship as well, where individuals who might have had some of these barriers are able to overcome it. Think about it. AI could become a coach to help you develop a pitch that might help you get that equity that you need, those investors that you need, that you didn't have a mentor to help you before and can. It could help you leverage LinkedIn and develop networks and help you develop those conversations on how to get that mentor to work with you, where you didn't have individuals helping you along the way before, okay? So I see AI as a facilitator in entrepreneurship and creating a whole new wave of entrepreneurship and individuals who can compete more effectively. Next question is, should I start alone or with a co-founder? It depends on the business. Co-founders are great in the sense that you have two people who are working on it. You share responsibility. You can share the risk along the way. And if you're bootstrapping, you're putting money in. The problem is that it's like dating. Things go wrong, okay? You can have problems with co-founders, and next thing you know, your whole business is falling apart because one of you wants to continue, the other doesn't want to continue. They want to go in a new direction. So I always say, if you find a co-founder, make sure that their expertise complements your expertise, which is great, but also make sure that you have a solid relationship and an understanding. You might want to even think about a partnership agreement on what happens if things don't go well. Who is going to buy out who, what percent of ownership, et cetera, okay? So there's pros and cons to partnership, but think of it like dating. You just don't want to date anybody. You want to make sure that it's somebody that you want to spend that time with and you trust along the way. Next question, when should I hire my first employee? When you need one, okay? When you can't do it all yourself and you realize I'm getting overwhelmed and you're not meeting customer expectations. When you, let's say, for example, customers start complaining, they're not getting the service they wanted or not in a timely manner, or the product, you probably need somebody to help you, okay? And rather than a co-founder, it's an employee. Maybe it's a business where you need to ship things out and you're delayed a week to get things shipped out because you're just so busy doing other things, okay? So you need an employee specific to help you. You don't want to pay people if you don't need to, but when you are falling behind and you're getting customer complaints and you might be losing customers as a result, that's the time to start hiring employees. You don't do it till you need it, and hopefully it'll become really obvious when you get to a point and what kind of help you need. If it's a shipping help or if it's a marketing help or whatever it is that you need along the way. Okay. The last question is, where can I find resources for my business? There's a lot of free resources out there. There's also a lot of junk on the web, so be very careful about just Googling. And even with AI, asking questions, you always have to verify what you're getting. You may get misinformation, etc. Here at the Center for Social and Technology Entrepreneurship at CSUN, we have mentors, we have office hours where you can ask questions, we have programs like iCore to do customer discovery, we have a summer accelerator, we have classes, we have pitch competitions, we have all sorts of things that can provide resources to you. We even have a leadership fund we could get seed fund for your business. But in addition to CSUN, we work out with partners in what we call the entrepreneurial ecosystem locally. We have the Valley Economic Alliance located in Sherman Oaks. They provide mentors. You can get a free mentor that's going to help you develop your business and answer questions. We have the small business development centers. There's one in Ventura, there's another one in Canyon Country, all focusing on different things. They can help provide a mentor, they can help provide some templates for doing your business modeling, for your revenue and financial projections, etc., and they can answer questions along the way. We have SCORE, which is retired executives volunteering their time to help that you need. And then resources like Y Combinator, they have a lot of online resources that you can read, etc. Okay, I do recommend you vet things out if you're not sure what's quality, vice versa not. There's a lot of people on the web who claim that they are offering insights, and it's not always correct insights. And also industry-specific insights you need. You need a mentor who might be in the industry that you want to compete in, because how you operate in one industry could be very different than how you operate in another industry. But it's going out and getting advice and help and asking lots of people. When 3 or 4 people are saying the same thing, you're very likely hitting on the issue that you need to address. And mentors are sometimes there to challenge you, and entrepreneurs don't always like that, okay? So if you approach a mentor and say, I need help with this, and the mentor tells you, but that's not where your problem is. Here's your problem, okay? For example, and I see this with students all the time. They say, I need money. I need an investor to come in and give me money. And it's like, you don't have a clear problem yet. You don't have a clear business idea. You don't have a revenue model. You're not ready for money. And then this individual actually had 2 businesses that they're working on. And the mentor said, and these are 2 different kinds of customers. They're not the same. And you have to recognize that the one is the everyday customer, maybe at flea markets. The other one are corporations. And totally different approaches to how do you approach them. So sometimes mentors tell you things that you don't necessarily want to hear, and you have to remain open-minded and recognize that maybe they see something that you don't. And they're only there to help you move along the way. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and answering the questions that you have. So if you have any further questions, reach out to the Center for Social and Technology Entrepreneurship. We can reach us at entrepreneurship@csun.edu or at Instagram at csun_entrepreneurship. And make sure you like and subscribe. We look forward to hearing from you.